On today's Locked On Thunder podcast, the Oklahoma City Thunder beat the Atlanta Hawks. Cason Wallace does not look like a rookie. In fact, he rose to the occasion after another tough defensive matchup. How good can this Thunder defense be with all of the moving parts? And what went right for OKC in this one?
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, media member, and editor-in-chief over at thunderousintentions.com, Rylan Stiles. Follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Follow the show on Twitter at LOThunderPod. Email the show, LOThunderPod@gmail.com. Become part of the Locked On Thunder Insiders by going to subtext.com/LockedOnThunder. On today's show, brought to you by FanDuel, we're diving into the Oklahoma City Thunder beating down the Atlanta Hawks. The Thunder have to learn to play with the lead, but they were able to flip the switch tonight. Cason Wallace looks special. Lou Dort continues to thrive in this new role, and this Thunder defense is starting to put together just how successful they can be. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets after winning a $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. In this game, the Thunder had no Kenny Hustle, no Keontae Johnson, no Olivier Sarr. Elected not to play Bertans, Mann, Micic, Poku, and Lindy Waters. So they had their starting five back. SGA was reinserted into the lineup. You know, there's never a good time to get hurt, but SGA got hurt last Wednesday against the Pelicans. Thursday was a scheduled off day. He missed Friday's game, and then for the first time all year, they had back-to-back off days over the weekend. So you trade 4 days of rest for Shai for one game. That's a pretty good trade-off for OKC, and he was able to play his normal rotation, and he played really well. Like he got back to what you're used to seeing from him in this game. The free throws still have not gone his way yet. I wonder how much of that is the officials having a point of emphasis on limiting what they call for Shai because of their narrative around Shai's game. Look, that stuff matters. They have meetings before every game and talk about, you know, what players like to do and how players get to the line and how players play and the narratives that are out there. And so typically you'll see every season there's a few guys that typically get to the free throw line a lot that start out getting a tighter whistle. And then as the season progresses, those emphasis wear off and it kind of all levels out back to normal. But for right now, it has to be incredibly frustrating to be playing the same way and being officiated differently. But still, even through that, he found a way to look like he did last year, even without a high free throw number. We'll talk about his game coming up. The biggest thing from this game against Atlanta is that the young Thunder team has to figure out how to play with a lead. Now, it is far easier to play from behind. It's why the Thunder made their money doing that a year ago, where they were able to just play kind of loose, and while you're playing loose and you're kind of scrapping it back in the game, on the opposite side, the other team who has the big lead, they're playing loose in the wrong direction, right? They've kind of taken the foot off the gas is the common phrase that you hear. So it was another 20-point lead that was dwindled down into single digits after blowing the game against the Pelicans, where you're up by 22 points versus the Pelicans. In the Pelicans game, they were not able to flip the switch back on. In this game, they were. And I think that it just shows that you are watching this team progressively get better, progressively build. These were two similar games where it's a home game against a good team. Pelicans, of course, better than the Hawks, but where you build this big lead right out of the gate, how do you sustain it? And so for the most part, the Thunder were able to keep them at around a 7-point deficit. The Hawks did make a run to make it a 2-possession game. And then the Thunder were able to have a sequence. Like, and every team, if you watch the NBA, you're going to know that, like, even the best of the best teams build huge leads, see it dwindle, build them back up. It's a game of runs. It's like an accordion being played on the game chart of the win expectancy chart. I think that it's hard to maintain that tempo, that urgency that the Thunder play with, and that's what they're best at doing whenever you have a big lead. They're best at getting out in transition. They're best at getting out and running. It's hard to do that whenever you've already accumulated a 20-point lead. Getting over that mental hurdle will be the next step for this young core. But the fact that in a week's time, you saw them not be able to turn it back on against the Pelicans until it was far too little, far too late. And then you saw them able to buckle down against the Hawks and get this game with a nice cushion at the end, I think is showing you the progress. And it's kind of visualizing what we've talked about all year long, where this season is still about development, but not in the way that you've been preached about development in the past. Like this year is still about learning and growing as the Thunder organization. But winning is still at the focal point of it. It's just to get to the winning end of these games, you have to watch this team go through the trial and tribulation and find out what works for them and find out how to get there. And so they couldn't get there versus the Pelicans. They're able to address it and fix it against the Hawks. And so now you welcome in, the Cavs, and we'll see what you do on Wednesday against the Cavs to conclude this homestand. But end of the day, this was a really good example of just surviving and advancing. And it is hard to play with a lead in the NBA, no matter how good you are, no matter how veteran laden that you are. It is hard to play with the lead than versus playing from behind. But nonetheless, they were able to get it together when it mattered the most. Cason Wallace was awesome. Like, this is a rookie who just turned 20 years old today, and he's been asked to guard Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Trae Young in the last 2 games. And Mark reiterated that the Thunder trust Cason Wallace in these matchups and in these moments. And they believe he can do this, even as a 19, now 20-year-old. And Cason Wallace's mentality of loving and embracing these challenges, I think, is what sets him apart from other players. He's an advanced defender. He covers a lot of ground defensively, so it's hard to shake him. He was able to show you that recovery speed against Trae Young especially. You know how slithery Trae Young is to get to the rim and shoot those floaters. And you know how slithery he is to blow by guys. But also, you understand how good he is at taking those step backs. And Cason defended all those things very well. The one time that Trae beat him was with the help of a screen where Cason couldn't get through the screen, which he's typically very, very good at. And Trae got downhill, and then it kind of threw the defense out of whack, so to say. So, ultimately, Cason did a really good job defending Trae Young, and that's hard to do. And it's hard to do the way Cason did it, right? It wasn't as though he had a lot of good possessions, but also a lot of fouls. He had 1 foul in this game while defending a player who, we can be honest, is reliant heavily on foul baiting, if you want to call it that, just being savvy with how to move his body to pick up fouls. He's really good at drawing fouls, and that is a skill in the NBA, no matter if you like it or not. But to have a rookie not fall for a lot of that stuff, I think was encouraging to see, and just kind of a testament to how long-term this is. This is just the baseline for what Cason Wallace says. And, you can talk about this coaching staff. If there's one thing that I trust this organization to do, it's to breed elite defenders. And so with this baseline, Cason Wallace is going to be an elite defender. If this is his starting point, and you're going to put him with David Akinyoye, you're going to put him with Mark Daigneault, you're going to put him around these guys, he's going to be an elite defender in the NBA. There's just no doubt about it for me, because if this is the starting point, I trust those guys to shape the future. And his anticipatory skills are so good. Him playing the passing lanes is awesome, because it's not necessarily a gamble. Anytime you try to jump the lane, you are theoretically gambling, because you might be so far to position that you can't recover. But it goes back to how lengthy his strides are to get back into position to recover if he doesn't get the deflection. But more often than not, he's able to, at minimum, disrupt the pass, at maximum, get the steal and head the other way. And so I think that his ability to time when to hunt that steal and when to just stay home is something that, again, is beyond what a rookie typically is capable of. Typically, a rookie, you see a pass coming your way, you get these wide eyes, you want to go make a play so bad, you want to turn defense into offense, especially with the messaging being preached to this Thunder team of how they want to play basketball. You want to be a part of that, and you can just get overzealous with trying to go get that. Cason Wallace does a good job of picking his spots, and it works to his benefit, and did in this one. And then when he gets out in transition, not only is he always filling the lanes correctly and understanding when he needs to dive toward the rim, when he needs to pop out to the corner to be a safety net for the driver. He understands the positioning in transition, but his leaping ability, he's not going to go win a dunk contest in Indianapolis this winter, but his leaping ability is still really good. It's not going to be showy Vince Carter dunks, but if you watch him, the spring that he has to quickly accelerate into the air and throw down a dunk in transition with a hard contest coming, it's going to be nearly impossible to stop him in the open court because he can get to the rim so quickly off the ground. And so there were a lot of tough closeouts on these transition buckets. Like, it was not as though the Hawks watched him get a steal or get an outlet pass and just gave up. Like, a lot of the times the Hawks were hunting him down, and he was just able to beat you to the spot and beat you to the rim. I think that's a testament to him. He was the recipient, of course, of the behind-the-back pass from Chet Holmgren, and he did not expect that to be the behind-the-back pass from Chet. He admitted that post-game, but he knew Chet was going to do something special because Chet was kind of eyeing him on that possession. But ultimately, him and Lu Dort did a great job on Trae Young. He did a great job this whole season at fighting over screens. I think that as the rapport comes together with him and this roster, there are times where the big men are anticipating that he's not going to be able to go over the screen. And so they are hedging too hard. They're playing too hard up on the guard, whenever in reality they can drop a little bit because Cason's going to get over that screen. And so I think that Cason is so good at it that it's kind of throwing off a little bit of the defense, just a tad at times, to where as you get more comfortable with the tendencies of your teammates, we're only 7 games into this season. Like, as you get more aware of what these guys are good at versus not, and you can alter your game off of it, it's going to make this defense be really good. And we haven't even seen Kenrich Williams play yet, who is an awesome defender for OKC. So you have this combination of Lu Dort, Cason Wallace, Kenrich Williams, and then you're funneling all of that into Chet Holmgren. You have a superstar in SGA who is a positive asset defensively. Not many superstars can say that in the NBA, that average 30 points a night. So I think that Cason just adds a perfect element, and you're seeing right now how he plays Thunder basketball. And it ties into what I was preaching at the draft of, it doesn't matter how many guards you have. This Thunder roster still has a lot of guys with the column that say G. They don't have a lot of guys in that column that are better than Cason Wallace on day 7 of his NBA career. And so you just take that guy in the top 10. That's who you take. You don't draft for a position. You don't draft for anything else. You don't draft to protect someone else. You draft who you think the best player is. And I think that they got this right in Cason Wallace. And so he was awesome, but so was his mentor in Lu Dort, who is finding his role in the NBA and is carving out what we've been craving from Lu Dort for a very long time. But first, I want to say right now, my good friends over at FanDuel, folks. FanDuel is great. You're going to want to check them out today. It's the perfect time for FanDuel to me, because when you go there, there's so many options. So go there right now to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. What you got to do is, if you're a new customer, put down a $5 money line bet. And the money line is just who you think's going to win. And so you can bet on the largest favorite on the board. As long as you win it, you're going to get $150 in bonus bets. I tell you, a sneaky way to take advantage of this is college basketball. Now, hopefully you didn't do this with Michigan State, but ultimately picking a favorite versus the Children of St. Mary's, you're going to be able to get a win on the board for FanDuel on the money line bet. So you can also bet on spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. Why I love FanDuel is right now, it's so entertaining because not only can you load up college basketball, which just got started, it's still NFL season. It's still college football season. It's, of course, NHL and NBA season, so we can already get a little preview action of what's going to happen with this game against the Cavaliers on Wednesday. The Thunder are 2.5-point underdogs at home versus the Cavs, so you can go check that out on FanDuel as well. So it's a great time to get started at FanDuel. Check them out today at FanDuel.com/lockedon, FanDuel.com/lockedon. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single morning, every single day. We're here for you, talking Thunder basketball. On Wednesday's show, we're doing a mailbag podcast, so drop your questions below on YouTube. Drop your questions on Twitter at Ryland_Styles. We're going to talk the Bali situation in the first segment, but after that, it's your show. We're going to take your questions about the Thunder to this point in the season. And then on Wednesday, after the Cavs game, we're going to be right back here recapping it all on Locked On Thunder. And again, if you are driving around, you might be busy during the winter season, holiday season, during these games, check it out today on SiriusXM. So you can just go to the SiriusXM app and search Oklahoma City Thunder. You can catch all the games whenever the Thunder and Cavs play. For example, tonight at 7 o'clock Central Time, just search Thunder on the SiriusXM app, and boom, you can listen to the game with Matt Pinto and crew, and you can also listen to Locked On Thunder there as well. But we are free and available anywhere you get your podcast from. So let's dive into Lu Dort. Lu Dort is finding his role. And this is something that I preached about on Monday's show, but I asked Mark about it before the game on Monday, and Mark said that he loves the role that Lu Dort is playing and that it's a more mature role. And I think that's a perfect example of what's happening. I get it that it got tiring hearing me specifically talk about like what Lu Dort could be with this team coming up this year, last year, whenever he was not having a successful stretch of basketball on the offensive end of the floor. But I think now that we're seeing in a small sample size, he's got to continue to do this. Like, we cannot just sit here and wave the white flag and say that it's over. But if he can continue to do this, this is why you view Lu Dort the way the Thunder do. It's like a fifth starter, and it's like a part of this, and why they paid him what they did, and why, while fans are kind of eager to kind of push him out and bring Cason in and make a big trade, why the Thunder very much value Lu Dort is because you're seeing what he can be. He's gotten so much better at his shot selection of, like, it's either the rim or it's shooting threes. It's perfect for modern basketball. But even beyond shot selection, it is the pure confidence and the decision-making. It's a confident decision-maker for Lu Dort this year. Whereas before, he had the confidence. And no offense to Lu Dort before, but he did not have the decision-making. Like, he would take wild heat checks. He would take wild shots. He would drive into 3-4 guys, sometimes 5, and he wouldn't be getting a burger, folks. He'd be getting blocked at the rim. So in this case, you're seeing him not only take better shots just like on the shot chart of like where they are pinned on the floor, but better decision-making of last night. He's driving and he's under control. He's not driving just for the sake of driving into the rim because he thinks that that's what he should do. He's under control, so he's able to have this beautiful dump-off pass to Josh Giddey, who is wide open in the lane. He did miss the shot, so it doesn't go down as like a hallmark play for Dort, but that is a highlight of the decision-making from Lu Dort that last year would have either ended in an ill-advised shot at the rim or a turnover because he was so wild, because he was so out of control. And that body control and that sense of you can call it confidence, but more so kind of this decision, like decisiveness of knowing what he wants to do, allows him to also absorb contact and finish through contact. So you're seeing him get to the line more this year than what you're used to. And he was always built like this. He was always built like a player who should finish through contact and really make opponents pay at the rim, but he just never did until now, and it's getting better and better as each game goes by. And I think that even though statistically it's not some wild, huge jump, it's the jump of the eye test that is so encouraging for Lu Dort. And that corner three is working. I said it all last year. He has never shot below 40% on corner threes since his rookie season. And that's continued in a big way this season. And you're seeing, because he looks more efficient offensively, it feels like fans are able to enjoy more what he's doing defensively. And he's able to help you turn offense into defense, whether it be deflections and steals, but also like he blocks Trae Young's jumper and it goes to Shai, and Shai throws the lob to J-Dub, and it's just the exclamation point. It's the party. It is the victory cigar of this game. I think that Lu Dort is going to continue to improve his reputation among a fan base with his efficient play, because he's an incredible defender. And if he can be an efficient offensive player, that's all he was missing. In this game, he shot 40% from three. He shot 60% from the floor, 19 points, 9 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 blocks. This is what you want Lu Dort to be. And I think up until now, he had been the only player that was willing to be overly aggressive and hunt his own shot and try to go get his. And that's just not the kind of team that this is anymore. It's better for him and the team to play this way. Even forgetting about the big picture stuff, even if you still believe that what Lu Dort is can be upgraded for the Thunder, this is how you make him upgradable still. He's playing his best basketball right now. His best basketball is not what they were doing before when trying as a playmaker. His best basketball is this really efficient shooter who plays good defense. So it's a win-win. It's a win-win whether you see him in the long-term picture or whether you see him as increasing his value elsewhere. No matter what happens, this is great for the Thunder short-term, great for the Thunder long-term, and great for Lu Dort in both ways as well. So it's awesome to see him embrace this role. And I think that Mark has harped on this a lot of, like, Lu Dort does not get talked about as a young player, but he is. It's as though we're kind of sick of Lu Dort because we've seen Lu Dort the most, like we've seen him and Shai the most, and so we treat them as though they're these fossils, when in reality they're still heading into their prime and heading into what they're going to be as a player. So he did change this year. He has improved this year. Now he's done it for 7 games. Got to do it for the full season. Got to prove that this is who he is, and I think it is, because the reason I'm so confident in saying that is because we've seen it in different environments. We've seen him play that same effective reduced role, even while Shai's not playing a single minute. We've seen him play that same reduced role, even while Josh Giddey and J-Dub both had terrible offensive games in Cleveland. He was still able to reserve himself on the offensive end. And I love the number line analogy that Mark used last year of there's some players who are just going to play within the flow of the offense and not do too much. And at times you want them to do more, but they're not going to. And there's players who are going to do too much. And you want to push every player toward the middle, or as close to the middle as you can get. And so I think that Lu Dort is getting closer to the middle and is getting closer to what the Thunder want him to be as a sufficient weapon for their offense and for their team. And so it's great to see for Lu Dort. Could not be happier just for him, because he's playing really good basketball. And I would say the best basketball he's ever played right now for OKC. Chet Holmgren is just an absolute different threat for the Thunder. It is something that the Thunder have not had in a long time. And even in this game where he had been wildly efficient as a player this season, he was not efficient shooting the ball this game, but he was still able to bend the defense and force them into compromised positions, because you have to respect him. You have to close out so hard on him, and he has the dribbling ability to make you pay for hard closeouts. And whenever you look at what he did late in this game, grabbing that offensive rebound and turning it into an and one, that to help salt the game away, that is something that the Thunder just hadn't had the last few years. And I hope the Thunder use him more. And my version of using him more might not be in line with what you're thinking, I guess, of like, yes, he should get more shots just in general, like just pure raw shots. But I'd be curious, like whenever the shot clock does dwindle down, because it's going to happen sometimes. So you saw last night where it was Shai step backs, even Wiggins hit a step back, which was awesome. But like every time that he's gotten the opportunity to be kind of a safety valve for the Thunder late in the shot clock, where you just kind of throw it to him and there's nothing more he can do than just turn around and throw it up. At 7 feet tall around the rim with his shooting touch, it's going to work more often than not. So he can really be a nice weapon for you in that way as the season goes on. But I asked him before in the Tulsa game, the Tulsa preseason game against Detroit, of like, you keep your blocks in bounds almost all the time. Like, is that like a skill? Is that luck? And he admitted it's a little bit of both, a little bit of luck, but also like there's intention to try to keep them in bounds. And he's been doing that this year. Like his block numbers are not only eye-popping, but they're not empty blocks. And so with how good the NBA is and how many good players there are, how many good scorers there are, if you send a shot into the 5th row, it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, depending on how much time's left on the shot clock. Now, if there's a 0.3 of a second on the shot clock, yeah, okay, you did end their possession. But if you send it into the 5th row and there's still 5 seconds left, with as creative as coaches are and as good as players are, a baseline out of bounds play with 5 seconds on the shot clock is not a death sentence. But keeping it in bounds and having your guys go get it and go run the other way is a huge advantage, and turning those blocks into huge advantages for OKC. And the pin block off the glass was just fun to see. He had 16 points, 12 rebounds, 3 assists, a steal, and 3 blocks in this one. Chet Holmgren was just awesome tonight. Now, we mentioned at the top of the show, SGA is kind of figuring out how to kind of play like his old self without getting the free throw calls. I also want to talk about Josh Giddey, who I think that the numbers are not going to bear out the changes he made to his game in this game against the Hawks. We'll talk about that coming up as well. But first, I want to tell you right now about our good friends over at Jase Medical. Check them out today, jasemedical.com. It is offering you the customizable Jase case for dozens of add-on medications. Choose the medications that best fit you and your family's unique needs. So what Jase case is like, they're going to send you this case of these great antibiotics that can help you in a pinch if you're not able to get to your antibiotics and your ability to protect yourself. So Jase Case is continually working to expand their medication offerings. In recent efforts, they've even added a lot of different medications that you can go check out. So check it out today at jasemedical.com. Use code Locked On at checkout for $20 off of your order. That's promo code Locked On at Jase Medical, Locked On at Jase Medical, Jase medical.com. And so you want to go check them out today because they can get you these Jase Medical emergency kits, and they can have these 5 essential antibiotics to treat the most common and deadly bacterial infections to help you out in case of emergency, in case of need. And it can really help you just have peace of mind that you have what you need on hand in the case of an emergency. So check it out today at Jase Medical. That's JASE medical.com. Promo code Locked On. That's promo code Locked On for $20 off of your order. Check them out today at Jase Medical. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single morning, every single day. We're here for you, talking Thunder basketball. All right, folks. Josh Giddey. Look, I get it. It's been a rough season, especially statistically for Josh Giddey, and he's admitted that, it's been a rough start for him. He's admitted that he has to start getting it going besides just the fourth quarter. I don't even want to talk about the stat sheet in this one. Admittedly, the stat sheet was not good. 4 turnovers, 30% from the floor with no threes. Like, if you're not going to shoot threes and you're going to shoot 30% from the floor, that's not a recipe for success. He only had 4 assists in this game to 4 turnovers. 7 boards was good for him, 8 points. I think that this game, and this is me, theorizing, but I think that this game was a snowball effect for Josh Giddey. It didn't go right from the jump. He got frustrated. He got the technical foul. Lou Dort threw a pass off his back. For that to happen, I don't even put that on Lou Dort necessarily. I think that Josh Giddey was just so whether you want to call it flustered or razzled or whatever you want to use for him being kind of out of it because things were not going his way. I think that's kind of the miscue there because that's how the Thunder play. They're going to push the pace, and Josh knows that. Josh knows, hey, you're going to get the pass from Lou Dort. So what I think you can take away from this game is that it's a bad shooting night in the worst possible timing. We talked about how Shai had a great timing on hyperextending his knee. You could not have picked a worse time to have a game like this from Josh Giddey because in the midst of this slow start to the season, it looks on paper as though this was a continuation of this bad stretch of basketball. But in reality, I thought the process in this game versus the Hawks was the best process Josh has had all season long. He very seldomly went to the floater. He very seldomly shied away. He attacked the rim extremely hard. He didn't get foul calls. He didn't convert. That was his 2 biggest issues. And there were moments and stretches where he checked himself out of games. He was still on the court, but checked himself out of games because things were not going his way, I think, just from watching. Obviously, I'm just hyper-analyzing this. But I think that the process was there. The results weren't. And when you're watching this team, and I get it, the excitement is so back. And I see it. I see it around Oklahoma City. I see it with my own family of people being excited about Thunder basketball again. And so we want to just dive head in, but we have to realize big picture, this is 7 games. And big picture, some guys are just slow starters. And Josh, I think we're going to find is just a slow starter. He started slow last year. He's starting slow this year. I don't think that he magically forgot how to play from that faithful night in New Orleans where he looked like a budding rising star against New Orleans in an elimination game to today against the Hawks in November. I don't think he forgot how to play basketball. I don't think he forgot what he was doing. There's just something about it that's just off right now. And I've got to trust that he'll break through because he showed he can do it last year. Now, eventually that's got to actually happen. But for right now, I am interested to see these next couple of games. I know it's a lot to ask, folks. I want to see Josh Giddey get through this road trip because I really believe that when you watch that game back and you just see what he was attempting to do, there was well-intentioned plays from Josh Giddey. They just didn't work out. And eventually they've got to work out. And they did last year after a slow start, but I know that it's frustrating right now. SGA was able to work out a 30-point game, 8 rebounds, 6 assists, a steal, 2 turnovers. He shot 55% from the floor. He shot 43% from 3 on 7 attempts in this one. And I think that you saw a great game that embodies what Shai is. And Shai is just this counter fighter. He can set you up and then just counter whatever you choose to try to utilize against him. So, for example, in this game, he starts the game out as this table-setting point guard who's setting up his teammates. And then you saw, as you're watching, that the Hawks are now kind of dispersing themselves naturally to try to take away his drive and kick options. And as soon as the Hawks did that, SGA goes full head of steam downhill at the rim. And so with SGA, the beauty of his game, especially as he starts to incorporate and hit some three-point shots, is that there is no limiting him. He's a bona fide superstar. If you try to limit his passing, he's going to get downhill. If you try to limit him getting downhill, he'll stop on a dime and pop that elbow mid-range shot. If you try to press up on him, he's going to create space with his ability to be herky-jerky getting to the rim, but also his ability to hit step backs. If you, of course, try to play off of him, he's just going to pop a shot, and we're seeing him be more comfortable shooting threes and hitting threes more often. So if you give him too much attention, then he'll go back to top section A of kicking out to his teammates. And he finally has a roster of guys who, if he's kicking out to Cason Wallace, if he's kicking out to Isaiah Joe, if he's kicking out to Chet Holmgren, if he's kicking out to J-Dub, you feel very confident. If he's kicking out to Lou Dort this year, you feel very confident. So he's finally got this roster of guys who you have to respect, and it's elevated Shai's game because he's elevated his playmaking, which goes back to FIBA, where we noticed that his passing was much improved. It was improved last year, but even more improved this summer, and now you're reaping the rewards of it at the perfect time because you're able to actually threaten the defense with his playmaking. He could have improved his playmaking all he wanted to a couple of years ago. You just didn't have the options to make defenses respect your playmaking. They were willing to live with wide open Gabriel Deck shots. Didn't matter, right? So I think that this year it's a combination of both for him to improving his game, of like his team improving, but also he got better as a passer and a playmaker as well. He shot 6 times at the free throw line. A little inflated, a little Mickey Mouse free throws there because some of them were intentional fouls. But he was awesome defensively, awesome in the defensive glass as well. And you saw last year, he was an excellent defender, according to Synergy. He really made an impact on that end of the floor. It should not be a surprise to anybody that he is a plus defender. And it just continues to grow why I think that we're going to look at this defense here in April and say that they're one of the 10 best defenses in the NBA. I really believe that because you have all these guys who can do it. And one of those guys that can do it is J-Dub. And J-Dub caught a couple lob passes. He threw down that outlet pass in transition, sticking his tongue out, going into timeout. Not only was he efficient as like a 21 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 block night on 61% shooting from the floor, but he's energy guys typically are not 21 point a game guys that can do this night in and night out. They're not typically those kind of players. Jalen Williams can get you 20 plus points, and he can also provide a huge spark with the way he scores to ignite the crowd, with what he's willing to do for his teammates on the defensive end to ignite his teammates. And I just think that J-Dub is going to go under the radar for a little bit. It's kind of like with Josh Giddey last year. Like in year 2, Josh Giddey was incredible after the first 10 games of the year. Post first 10 games of the year, he was awesome. But look at J-Dub over here. Look at J. Will stepping up. Look at Isaiah Joe. Like you had all these new guys that you were kind of mesmerized by. I think there's a teeny wince of that, of like, look at Chet, look at Cason, look at all these guys, where it's like J-Dub is not only like still doing what he was doing last year and still being efficient in a new role, but he's like incredibly good and incredibly fun to watch. Speaking of the bench, Isaiah Joe was huge. 4 threes and 3 assists plus good defense to be able to stay on the floor. Ousmane Dieng had another game like Josh Giddey, where I loved him being confident in his shot and taking high-quality shots and not shying away from the action, but they didn't go in. And so some nights they're just not going to go in, but the process for Ous was there. He is questionable with a wrist injury. Again, on the injury report, we'll talk to Mark tomorrow to figure out more about that. Aaron Wiggins only played 7 minutes, but was awesome in those 7 minutes. Play him more, please. And then just as a last wrinkle on the bench, as these games start to heighten in importance and they start to heighten in, eventually you're going to play games where it's like possession by possession by possession down the stretch. And Mark loves to do offense, defense at each side ball. To be able to parlay offense, defense from Isaiah Joe to Cason Wallace is so awesome. And I think that it's great for what this team can do, because if you do, like the risk in offense, defense sometimes is like, what if you put your offensive guy in there and then there's not another dead ball to get your defensive guy in there? But if that happens and like you're quote unquote stuck with Isaiah Joe or stuck with Cason Wallace, they are very good at their respective skills. Like Isaiah Joe's an incredible sharpshooter. Cason's a great defender, but they're not obsolete on the other end. So there's no danger there in rotating those guys in and out based upon matchup, based upon, the situation that dictates and where you're playing on the floor. So it was great to see. Slob Wizard on Twitter says that Shai and Chet are MVPs of this game. Co-MVPs, I'll agree. Big takeaway from Andrew was Cason has a lot of promise. I agree with that as well. Big takeaway from Ismail was J-Dub looks more and more like a future star. Cason is making Presti look like a draft genius. Agree and agree. Great job so far on the takeaways, fellas, and people alike. Fan Season says, I don't know what Fan is, but Fan Season is here. Maybe it's like a football player or something. Says game MVP is Lou Dort. Dort deserves a lot of credit. Chase says that Dort's growth is beautiful. Chet is him. Shai top 5 in the league. J-Dub found his rhythm. And Giddey has been peeing him. I understand. It's been a bad year for Josh Giddey so far, but I would just continue to kind of watch him, give him a little bit more time than what we're seeing right here. Humble Man 85 says, I love this team, and I saw that they really need to clean up the turnovers and cheap fouls. I agree. The turnovers have been an issue all year long. Now, some of that is just their play style of if you're going to play fast, you're going to turn the ball over. But some of it is just like, all right, we got to clean this up early season, lacking chemistry type of stuff. Sports Card Collector says Cason needs to start. I would presume that right now you'd put him in over Giddey on the starting 5. I don't think that the Thunder are going to change anything about the starting lineup. I think that this is the starting 5 that they're going to roll with throughout this season. But one thing is assured, that Mark is going to change the rotations up pretty much game to game. But especially as we get larger sample sizes, I'm curious to see what the rotations look like in the coming weeks as you tinker maybe with like, hey, those are the starting 5, but there might be a quick little substitution here and there to kind of put more advantageous lineups on the floor and kind of put pieces together that might fit better in general. But the starting 5, to their credit, got off to a really good start against Atlanta. They actually kind of let go of the rope a little bit whenever they didn't have their full 5 on the court out of the shoot. So to their credit, Josh Giddey at Shoot-Around said that they were having meetings, like talking about, hey, we got to start faster. And they did do that against Atlanta. It's sustaining it for 48 minutes, which is tough. And especially for a young team. This is still the second youngest team in the NBA still. And like you have all these hopes and aspirations and expectations for them and what they're going to be. So I'd say give them just a little bit more time, and we'll continue to talk about them every single day here on Locked On Thunder. So subscribe anywhere you get your podcast from, including on YouTube. Follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Styles. And until tomorrow, as we do your mailbag questions and talk about Bally Sports, and then we're going to recap the Cavs game on Thursday. And then Friday, we're going to talk in-season tournament, how we like it so far after one game, and then kind of preview that pivotal game in Sacramento and the road trip. So a busy week here on Locked On Thunder. Saturday, we're, of course, going to recap that Kings game and just continue rolling on here on Locked On Thunder. So thank you all for listening. Thank you all who support the show. And until tomorrow, be good and be good to one another.